back. We're here at the Woodrow Wilson Center with Mr. Bob Hathaway. Moving on to the impending water crisis. We have spoken to more than a few people in our trip to the States who have told us that the problem we have in the northwest frontier province in Afghanistan is, as grave as it is nothing compared to what Pakistan will experience over the next 20, 30 years. Would you care to elaborate on the research you've conducted here?
Sure. You've got, first of all, global warming. In the short run, this may actually produce more water for you because the glaciers in the Himalayas are going to melt. But in the longer run, you're going to have severe water shortages simply because of global warming. Secondly, you've got more and more mouths to feed. This means more and more food to grow. This means more and more demands for drinking water, for bathing water. So while you are facing a shrinking amount of water, you're simultaneously going to have an expanding population. Pakistan 100 years ago had perhaps the most advanced irrigation system in the world, but you've let it run down. You haven't maintained it. And now you're paying the consequences for this. If you're reasonably well-to-do, you can import water. You can buy water. The water trucks will come in. You can go to the store and get bottled water. If you are poor, though, you don't have that ability. The water you can buy is much more expensive in poor neighborhoods. So just like some of these other problems that we've already talked about, if Pakistan does not move now to begin to address these problems, 10, 20 years from now, they're going to be infinitely more expensive to deal with. And the public health consequences of not acting on these issues, the environmental, the development consequences, the economic consequences, all of them are going to have a ripple effect all through society. And that really is sort of the bottom line on all these studies that we've done. Spend some money and get serious about the problems now while they're still solvable, or be forced to confront them 10, 20, 30 years down the road when they're going to be infinitely more difficult to deal with and infinitely more expensive to deal with.
Your report also says that currently there are 40 to 50 million Pakistanis who do not have access to clean drinking water or sanitation water. I don't know what our government officials are thinking about, but it certainly isn't about those 40 to 50 million people, because as your report also states, and your report is compiled with 12 or 15 different experts from different parts of the world.
Including Pakistan.
Including Pakistan. There are political ramifications to this. 15, 20 years down the world, down the road, you know, the glaciers, the water comes through India. The Indians have put many dams up. As it is, there's a water shortage. The waters in the Ravi River are drained. What do you think, in your mind, the eventualities could be? Could we go to war with India over something like this?
Well, the experts think, now I'm not talking just about the subcontinent, I'm talking globally. The experts are predicting that water may be the most serious cause for conflict in the 21st century. That's really sobering if you think about it. Now, in South Asia, clearly water is one of those issues that serves to aggravate tensions between India and Pakistan. There's also the reverse side of that. The Indus River Treaty, signed in 1960 between India and Pakistan, has been the most successful agreement between India and Pakistan in history. It has largely worked, not perfectly, but largely worked up until very recently. So water can actually serve as an element for peace in the region. But as you rightly say, it can also be an element of conflict, which is all the more reason why serious leaders on both sides need to address this issue today.
Power, trade, water, education, these are issues that are most concerning, or should be. And we haven't even gotten to extremism and militancy. We'll get to that now. You were in Pakistan recently. Tell us about your trip.
Well, I went there in part because I was hosting a conference on empowerment of women. It's another issue we could talk about. But as always, this is my third trip to Pakistan in the last 13 months. I'm a regular visitor. And when I go, I always go to try, as I call it, taking the temperature, trying to get a sense of what people are concerned about, what they are saying. One thing they were saying when I was there in October was everybody was talking about the Kerry-Lugar legislation. Now appears, if you look at polling, if you look at media, certainly if you look at what the government's saying, and also if you look at the action of the military, the army, it now appears that Pakistanis are beginning to focus on these issues. That's good. But a lot remains to be done, as your viewers, of course, know far better than I.
You alluded to the Kerry-Lugar bill. I've been here for the last 2 months, and needless to say, at least on the Hill, the mood seems a bit sober and angry at times also. You were in Pakistan. Why don't you tell us about what you felt the mood was like over there?
Well, as I say, I was in Pakistan in mid-October. It was right after the legislation had been passed by Congress. In fact, the President signed it into law while I was in Pakistan. Let me back up a bit. The intention of the legislation was to lay the groundwork for a sustained partnership, not with the Army, not with the government, not with a particular government, but with the people of Pakistan. As I said, I've been coming to Pakistan for several decades now, and every time I've come, Pakistani after Pakistani after Pakistani has said to me, "You don't care about us. Why are you always in bed with our military rulers?" This legislation actually was sought to transform this relationship. It is for only non-military assistance. It is for things that Pakistanis have said they wanted: democratic institutions, good governance, rule of law, education, civilian control over the military, health care. This isn't an American agenda for Pakistan. It's a Pakistani agenda, or it's at least what Pakistanis have told me for several decades. So I think people in the United States were disappointed at the firestorm of criticism which rose up in Pakistan, not during the several-year process in which this legislation was hammered out in Congress in a very public fashion. I mean, every draft of the legislation was a matter of public record. But only after the legislation was finally adopted, then many Pakistanis suddenly concluded this is the worst thing that's happened to Pakistan in 50 years. I think that's unfair. I think it was an inaccurate reading of the intent and the reality of the legislation. And I think it has created a little bit of disappointment in Capitol Hill and here in the government. Nonetheless, there is a widespread belief in Washington that we have to make this partnership work. For American interests, I also happen to believe that a good partnership between our two countries is in Pakistan's interest. If Pakistanis disagree with that, then they shouldn't feel obligated to accept American assistance. But so long as there's a consensus in Pakistan that it's in Pakistan's interest to have a good relationship with the United States, then I think this legislation can lay the groundwork for that.